Hello and welcome to the Footy Mailbag. We are back for the 2025 preseason, helping you get your starting team and season strategies in order. My name is Damo, and here with me, as usual, is Clarky.
Damo, it's fantastic to be here for another episode.
Excellent. You don't have your Magnum this week?
No. I ate the last one last week, and I didn't get any on the shopping. It was a whole thing.
We can talk about it later.
Cost of living. I can't afford Magnums. Name brand ice cream in this economy, Damo. I got mouths to feed.
Moving on. The Footy Mailbag account was tagged as needing to explain this and guide the community when the Flex was announced. Specifically, we were tagged by the Falcon Footy Podcast account. So, who better to help us chat about the Flex position than Jesse and Chris from the Falcon Footy Podcast? Welcome, Jesse. Welcome, Chris.
Hola. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. To be fair, there's probably like a lot of people better than us to discuss this, but we're happy to be here.
A lot of just better people.
Well, It's not like this. There's absolutely no connection or bias or sense of a Falcon takeover with the 60% of the Falcon being here and only 30% of the mailbag.
It's a real like Cotton On Geelong kind of deal here. There's a lot of like payola happening between both groups. Allegedly.
Where's my pay?
You get to work at
Still
Cotton
at Cotton
On.
On.
Yeah, it's still Cotton On. 24 an hour. It's pretty good.
Do I get farmland?
You get to spend time at Reece Stanley's farm.
Yeah.
No, that's not worth it.
That's about it.
That's not worth it.
But yes, listeners, in case you don't know, the Falcon, a footy podcast, is Jesse, myself, Chris, and Cass. We talk all things football and football adjacent. We have a bit of fun. It's a little bit less Supercoach related in that we only mention it because our life revolves around two things, football and Supercoach during the football season. But thank you. Yeah, it's good to have you guys on.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And to explain what the hell Flex is, because it has me worried.
Yeah.
All right, let's quickly run through some Supercoach relevant injury news to begin, and then we will get into the topic at hand. Nick Dacos is back in full training after being on a modified program due to plantar fasciitis. Elliot Yeo will be out for 4 to 8 weeks with an MCL and ankle syndesmosis injury. I can't say ankle for some reason.
He's 100 years old, that's why.
He injured his knee and ankle landing awkwardly in a tackle during West Coast's match simulation last week. One of the standouts on the track for Essendon, Alwyn Davey Jr., has unfortunately been ruled out for the next 4 to 6 weeks after undergoing knee surgery. And Jordan Ridley has also suffered a hamstring injury. Bombers are hopeful he'll be available for their second preseason game. Tim English is on a modified program at the Dogs after sustaining an abdominal strain. And at St Kilda, Matthias Philippou is out for 10 to 14 weeks with a stress fracture in his leg, while Rowan Marshall is set to miss the next 5 to 8 weeks with a pelvis injury. And just today, it was announced that George Wardlaw is out for up to 12 weeks with a hamstring injury at North Melbourne.
I think you're missing someone there, Damo. The very relevant Jason Johannesson is also undergoing surgery on his hamstring.
Hey, if you're picking Jason Johannesson, all the best to you, but it's not but it's not 2016 anymore, so it's been,
you hear that, Bevo?
What a year. What a year.
It's been 10 years. It's been 10 years.
There's a lot of horrific Supercoach relevant news in that one.
Yeah, but the people need to know.
Yeah, I'm really bummed about Ridley. I'm very sad.
But this is good for your role as a Nick Martin truther.
I'm 100% Nick Martin truther. I sent that question a few weeks ago, and I've had some naysayers, but I'm holding firm. He's still on my team. I don't know. I've got good vibes about the little Ray Romano lookalike.
Well, before we get into the meat of it, actually, it's probably a good time to ask, how are your preseason teams going? We haven't seen any match sims yet, and we only have really the news from the training track, but I imagine, have you guys put together a draft and you're just sitting on it, or are you the kind of people who just sort of play with it day by day now that the team pick is open?
I've found that in recent seasons, well, in past seasons, I'll say, I play around with it too much. and don't soundbite that.
You stole my joke before I could make it. Chris.
You know, they say, guys, if you play with your team too much, you get hairy palms.
You're gonna go blind.
Yeah.
I find that my first drafts actually would have been a much better team throughout the season to stick with, but I make so many changes that then there's a bunch of players who do really well who I originally had in my team off of gut feel that didn't make my team because I listened to all the advice. There's just so much helpful content around Supercoach, but there's so much content that it can kind of confuse you a bit now. So I actually made my first draft for my team only yesterday.
Oh.
Yes.
Jesse, how about you?
I'm the sort of person who plays with it every day. But as for my Supercoach team, I had to make that joke. I had it in my mind anyway.
Do I wear glasses?
There is nothing my Supercoach team hates more than seeing a 45-minute train to work coming. Because my team will change 400 times on that trip as I listen to various, Supercoach podcasts, namely this one. However, compared to previous years, I've cut out Twitter. Yes, that's right. I'm enlightened now. I've kind of stopped using Twitter, which is where a lot of the Supercoach information was or is. So I'm sort of doing my own research. Don't cut that part. Which is why I'm landing on players like Nick Martin. But I have, in doing so, I think I've got a few decent pods in my team. But yeah, we'll change 100 times between now and the season.
It's always good. Damo, take us to the main topic, brother.
All right. As I said at the top of the program again because Clarky liked it so much last time. This episode is all about the flex position, the possibilities for your starting team, how the use of it may evolve throughout the season, and what it could mean for your final side. And without further ado, I regret this so much. Let's talk about flex, baby. Let's talk about strategy. Let's talk about all the good ways and the new ways flex can be. Let's talk about flex. Let's talk about flex. Let's talk about flex. Let's talk about flex.
That's fantastic, Damo.
I love it so much. It's so good.
It really grows on you.
Well, that's the thing. First time I heard it, laughed. This time, I'm just jamming along. I'm like,
yeah,
we've got a smooth voice. All
There's
right.
a reason I've called the file name What Have I Done?
Damo's self-conscious, but I want you to write in and tell us how much you loved that, because Damo did good work on that one.
All right.
We had many theme songs. We've only usually got the one theme song, but I think we need to add that into our repertoire.
Clarky, kick us off. Who is currently sitting in your flex position?
It is currently the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. What Are You Doing in My Swamp, Sean Darcy.
Isn't he injured?
Isn't he injured?
Not really, no. But I also have him in my flex position, and I think it's for the same reason that Clarky does. But before we move on to that part of the discussion, Jesse, who is in your flex position?
It's rotating between three players, Will Ashcroft, Will Day, and Callum Mills.
And Chris, how about yourself?
Look, this is going to be a bit unexpected.
Hang on,
Darcy
everyone
Moore.
hold on to your hats.
Currently in my flex position is Kieran Briggs.
Damo and Clarky, can I swear in this podcast?
Yeah,
I'll allow it. I'll allow
Chris,
it
you're a
this time.
fucking idiot. What are you doing?
we need to address two things. One,
Okay.
why did you guys think Sean Darcy was injured?
I swear I read something about him being injured.
He's always injured. Like,
I thought he was out for like 4 or 5 weeks or something.
No. So Sean Darcy is currently in Qatar consulting with a biomechanist to make sure that his recovery from his knee is completely sound and he can return to full contact, full training.
That doesn't sound promising that he's flown to Qatar to see if his knee is okay.
So the way it was explained to me is AFL strength and conditioning departments don't have the funding to have a biomechanist on site, and they've had success in sending players like Heath Chapman and Sam Sturt. I think they also sent to Qatar as well, who are now seem to be completely over their issues. So they're just sending him there just to get assessed one last time before he comes back and hopefully appears in the second preseason game that I think they're hoping for.
Yeah, I believe he was there for a week, but I believe he was training to some degree before that as well. But
Yeah, he was
light loading him because they wanted to make sure that he had the opportunity to be as fit as possible, rather than.
He was in full skills training with no strapping and looked really good in ruck drills off to the side. So,
and hasn't he dropped a fair bit of weight? Like he's leaned up apparently.
He's dropped like 15 kilos or something ridiculous like that. He looks closer in body shape to like Josh Tracy or Alex Pearce.
Now,
I mean, I'm concerned of a player losing 15 kilos in that amount of time.
If he loses it that quickly,
did he have a tapeworm?
It probably means he doesn't. It probably means he didn't need it on him in the first place. It probably just meant it was like water weight.
He's drinking more than 4 liters a day. That one.
Oh, God,
I just love the idea. Did they test for tapeworm?
yeah, you can test for tapeworm, but I don't think he had a tapeworm.
Has a tapeworm division. Now, my second question is, Chris, Kieran Briggs.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, okay. Do you really want to get into the philosophies that we have around the flex position?
Yes. Yeah. So having Briggs in your flex position, what are you expecting out of Briggs? What was your thought process to have Briggs in that position?
Okay, so I have 3 thought process around the flex position, and I'm kind of jumping in between all 3. But Briggs fits into one of them. That's why I currently have him in there. So my
player.
The first one is the very obvious one. You just go with an out-and-out gun. It's just another position to use on either a really expensive high-quality ruckman or a really expensive high-quality midfielder. The second kind of theory that I have with the flex position, which this is where Briggs fits into it, is I feel like it's an opportunity to take a chance on a somewhat fallen primo who you think could bounce back. Briggs obviously had a bit of a down year last year. I feel like he could bounce back to be back up over that 100 plus averaging. If he doesn't start the season well, then it's an easy swap to a player of any position who has started the season well. That's my thinking behind it. It's not like the ruck where you kind of get yourself into a little bit of a hole and you've got to quickly swap. You can swap him to anyone who started the season well before the price changes. The third theory that I have is to obviously either use it as a rotating cash cow position. So essentially just constantly keeping a rookie in there. And the benefit of that is obviously that it removes that issue of if there's a new rookie who's come in, is on the bubble, but you don't currently have any other rookies in that position to downgrade to them. This completely removes that issue where you can kind of just keep it as a rotating spot for cash cows. They're kind of my 3 thought process, and I keep jumping between the 3.
Okay. I mean, I was big on Briggs last season and he completely let me down, so I don't know if I can do it again. But he did end 2023 really, really well. So maybe it was just a down year for him, you know. I won't call it second year blues because he's older than that, but it was his second year as the starting ruck. So maybe he was kind of still organizing himself in that position and the chemistry didn't quite carry over into last season. But I don't hate the idea behind it.
See, there is some logic behind these eyes.
Some. He falls in the category of like he could be good, like fallen premium kind of thing. There's a bunch of players around that price or cheaper, like Mills or Oliver. Is there a reason you're going for Briggs over someone probably more likely to score higher?
Purely because there's still risk with those players. Whereas Briggs, we know he is the number 1 ruckman. He's playing in a position that historically scores well. Like even in his down year last year, he still averaged 94, 95. Like it's not like he dropped off dramatically. He just had a bit of a down year. He's the very clear number 1 ruck. He's got a good midfield there. He's playing in a position that generally is one of the highest scoring positions on the ground. Callum Mills, whilst he is in my team, there's still risk around it. Clarky, we know what happened last year. There's still risk around it. Even though he's having a good preseason, I feel like there's a lot more risk around those types of players in those positions than what there is on a number one starting ruckman.
Okay.
I hate that you had a logical argument. Jerk.
Jesse, what are you expecting out of the flex position, and what's your thought process for your pick?
Similar to Chris, you can break it down to 3 different categories of play. You can go your premium. I've seen a lot of people who, as soon as it got launched, they just sat Max Gorn there. A ruckman is going to be your highest scoring, or one of your highest scoring positions on the ground, and they would just shove Max Gorn there. I don't like that. I don't like the vibes are off with that for me. The rotating rookie, I really like that idea. And Chris, I shouldn't think about the whole fact that if you have a rookie on the bubble that you can't fit into another position, that is just a really good loophole for that. I hadn't considered that. So that could change some of my thinking going forward. But, man, Chris, like you said, the fallen primo, the risky player, just having some fun with it. I mean, there are some players I'm thinking, normally I'd only consider for a draft, but now I'm like, maybe I just get a little bit cheeky and put I don't know, Dylan Shield there. Just pulling a player on my ass there. But you can do something like really wee and funky with it, and then just not announce it on a podcast and keep it to yourself. I'm going to put Dylan Shield there for the Vine.
Trust him to pull an Essendon player out of his ass.
Okay, Sean Darcy. he still plays for Freo currently.
And he's signed long term, so he should for a long time.
Contracts mean nothing.
The one that I've seen a lot of people going with, and it seems to, I don't know if everyone else has seen this, but it seems to be quite a bit of the majority of the community, and I don't quite understand it, is Matt Flynn. There's a lot of people putting Matt Flynn into their flex position, which I can kind of see the logic behind it, but if that backfires, it's a big hole to try and get yourself out of.
Well, it's a rotating rookie mentality with Matt Flynn at his price, Chris, because you can easily drop him down to a rookie on the bubble at any point if he's not firing quite what you need him to. And then also you have the benefit of, like you said, potential for him to be a number one ruckman. Because Bailey Williams
did have an injury scare, didn't he?
No, it was hyped up.
Okay. Ryan Daniels reported during the week he went off because a blister popped on his foot and he couldn't stand on it.
Hey, to be fair, that hurts.
I'd take a week off work.
But he's only slightly above rookie price, Matt Flynn, so he only needs to average, 75 to make money? At worst, as the number one ruckman, you'd hope as a ruckman that could be a floor for someone in that position. So at worst, you're upgrading him later on. At best, he averages 100, 105 and can be a long-term R2 for you for the season.
Can you see a trap opening up though with the flexibility of the flex position? So how many trades do we have this year? 30?
40?
40.
40.
Last year, and it's the same as last year, right?
Yeah.
Hasn't changed. I remember at the start of last year when they announced it was increasing, everyone's like, this is too many. And then it came to the end of the year and everyone's like, I don't have any trades left. Can you see people being a little bit too willy-nilly with trades because of the perceived freedom of the flex position? Trying to rotate a interesting mid-price through there, or just grabbing a rookie who they may not have got in previous years because maybe the bubble on them isn't, or the ceiling on them isn't too high, but they're just going to take a risk on them. Can you see that being a bit of a pitfall?
Hey, who's asking the questions in this podcast?
That's a good question.
Wait, we had the questions.
That is a really good question. Can we put a pin in that though? So me and Clarky both have Sean Darcy in our flex positions, and Clarky, I think our thought process might be the same.
Yes, and I believe it kind of answers Jesse's question a little bit as well.
I don't think it does.
Maybe.
Okay, so maybe we don't have the same thought process. The reason I have him there is if he is injured and they do find something wrong with him in Qatar and he needs to go through another set of rehab, my options open up where I don't have to replace him with another ruckman. I can replace him with a midfielder, a defender, or a forward, or whatever position I want, Whereas if he was in my ruck line and got injured during the season and my flex wasn't a ruckman, then I have to look for a ruckman that is around 520k, which is not a lot unless I go down to Jordan Sweet or someone below that. So my idea with him in flex is if he does get injured, or when he gets injured, I probably should say, to be fair, I'm not restricted in who I can move him to.
That's basically my thought process with Kieran Briggs, where I was saying that if he starts off the first 2 rounds before price changes, he only pulls out a couple of 80s, then I'm not limited by who I can then just trade him to.
Yeah, so my thought process is sort of like in contrast to what Jesse was saying before, and similar to you as well, Damo, where Sean Darcy is a guy who's a known quantity and represents value, but I think the biggest thing that I expect for him is to be a consistent scorer where I can drop out the more riskier picks in the lines that I sort of locked into a position. So, if you're starting Coleman in your team and he kind of stinks it up a little bit, or you've got rookies on field, you sort of end up with an extra premium score for someone like Sean Darcy for realistically not that much of an outlet. I think the strategy for me will be either to go with, all right, this is a backup guy to drop out a bad score and to sort of boost me for a week, or it'll have to be, like Chris said, like Chris and Jesse covered, like a cash generating, like, okay, cool, this is where get someone on the bubble if I need the cash gen, and just sort of keep that rolling a little bit, like every, 4 weeks or so. Because I think there is going to be a price limit where if you're taking too many risks with the flex position just because you can and because it's an extra guy, then you're going to find yourself in a position where you're constantly going to have to trade out that pick. And yes, we've got 40 trades, but you only have 5 boosts, which means that you have 2 trades really to make that move in. And if you need to go one up, one down, you don't have a boost because you've been messing with your flex spot or whatever. When it comes to upgrade season, that's kind of going to hurt you a little bit if you've been playing with that flex spot too much.
I think, would you guys agree there's also like a fourth way to look at this? A secret fourth way of, it's a junk position. Just put a cheap non-playing player there. There's your captain's loophole. Because, you could even, say, oh, Damon's giving me the no.
Damon's doing the no. What's his name from Jurassic Park?
Gotta say the magic word.
Okay, so none of you played Supercoach BBL, but that's kind of what people did with the wicketkeeper position. No, there was no good wicketkeeper to pick, so people would just put a random guy in there and basically use the flex position as another batter or bowler, and the wicketkeeper position basically got fobbed off. Like, that was how people were using it. But you can't do the same thing really for the flex position in this way, because don't use the flex for captain's loophole, because if you captain a non-playing player in your flex position, you don't get your vice captain score doubled or a captain score at all. It just uses your other 22 score as your round total without a doubled captain score.
Interesting.
Because it only counts your actual playing players. So your captain's loophole would work using your other bench spots, but because there is no an E player, there's no emergency player that activates for your flex position, it just uses your other 22 scores. It does not double your vice captain score.
That is good to know, because I actually had no idea on that. But even if you changed it and you made like your last bench spot in your midfield just a dead 100k player, and that way, you kind of put the play that you'd normally have there into your flex position, you could I can kind of see the argument for this year you're spreading X amount of money over one more player. If you can sort of make that extra player, void, you have more money to spend elsewhere. Because really, I understand, say last year there was that game where Tom Green got injured in the first 3 minutes and he scored 10 points. And that's kind of where the basis of the flex came from to introduce it here. How often does it happen? On average, how many points difference between your worst player and your second worst player?
I think you're probably overthinking a little bit, because the issue
100%.
The issue if I love you, sweet beautiful prince. The issue if you do that on a locked in line, a positional line, is that then you're limited to an emergency score that is only a defender. or only a midfielder or only a forward, right? The flex position is allowed to be any player. So why would you not pick a player that has high ceiling, low floor, that you can get return from every week in favor of another player instead of having to roll the dice on whichever line for your captain's loop or for your flex loop or whatever we're talking about here. So I think there's, as Damo said, with the way it works, there's actually no benefit to having it be a junk spot per se. It's either got to be economy or you've got to give yourself a safe, reasonable, like in and out consistent score, I think, like for whatever the optimal price you have left over after you build your team, right?
I'm trying to come up with like really wild solutions for it, and at the end of the day, I'm just going to go with like the safest bet, which is Will Day.
We'll talk more about that. Damo, you mentioned that it's evolved from be Brazilian butt lift super coach. What were there any other specific tactics that you saw it being used for? So obviously that's really great information because I actually hadn't heard that either about how the flex position worked, which is really good, I think, for our listeners to know. Were there any other tactics that you think could be evolved from its use in Big Bash to AFL?
I think people will upgrade their flex position before they upgrade their last or second last on-field forward line position. Because in your flex position, you could have 110 averaging midfielder in that position, whereas your best option at that sixth on-field forward position might only be averaging 85. So why would you go for an 85 averaging guy when you can get 110 averaging midfielder in that flex position and make that F6 player your 23rd score? And you could pick someone like a Jacob Van Rooyen who has a good end to the season, who might kick 6 goals against Richmond twice over the last 10 weeks, and he might outscore your flex position, but he's only averaging 85 on the year. So if he doesn't score 140 or whatever he ends up on, then your 110 averaging midfielder is there to kind of save your bacon.
While you played BBL, did it become a thing of like everyone had the same player in the flex position, or were there still a lot of diversity in it?
The flex was used all different ways. No one had the same sort of player. It wasn't the case of how you see team reveals now with it's always a ruckman in there at the moment. Like it always seems to be a ruckman in there at the moment. But in BBL, a lot of people would use a batter or a bowl. But the position that scores really well in the Big Bash Supercoach is the all-rounders that have the dual position bat bowl. So because they face enough balls, bowled enough balls that they're going to score well, no matter if they're chasing or whether they're bowling. So we might see someone use the flex position in AFL to bring someone in that's a mid forward, even though the flex can be activated from anywhere, but the player in the flex position can then be put back on field anywhere, kind of in that same way. So I don't see it kind of working in the same way, but I can see some tactics crossing over. But in BBL, it was best 11 of 12. There really wasn't a lot of on-field positions. There was only limited bench spots, so people were using it differently. Whereas in the AFL, you have all your bench spots. You have 31 players to pick with 23 on field. It's a little bit different in how people can use it.
I think it's really good in that sense, though, where we've talking about the different ways that you can use flex. But I think probably the biggest takeaway, at least from my perspective, is that you need to be, and pardon the term, but you need to be flexible with how you use the flex position. If you sit there and go, well, this player always needs to be a known quantity, then you might end up missing out on a rookie 1 week when you've got 22 safe players in your positions. So using it for both economy and scoring at the right times, as we always talk about, like your trading cadence and jumping on and off guys at the right time, your flex is kind of the extra piece in the puzzle that lets you move the jigsaw around.
Yeah, and Jesse, before when I put a pin in your question, you were talking about the in-season tactics of like, could you use it just as like a rookie position where you just upgrade the rookie over and over again, and I suppose you could, but you're limiting yourself to just having 22 scores unless that rookie goes completely off the charts. So it might work if maybe your flex position, maybe no one really nails that flex position to begin with, and then it takes people a while to kind of work out how to actually use it. And perhaps rotating a rookie in there and just building up a war chest, as you probably could term it. But like in season tactics, people will want to have best scorers there, but the rotating rookie might also work because it's hard. Like we haven't seen this before in AFL Supercoach, so there's going to be all different ways that people want to use it, and nothing is wrong at the moment because we just don't know how it's going to work out. But then you think about how it might work with a finished team, and I already spoke about like you'll upgrade that before you upgrade F6, but maybe, as you said, you do just, fob off your last midfield bench spot just so you have some kind of, captaincy loophole kind of thing. But it's like the way you phrased the question was really, really good, but there is no answer at the moment for it.
No. Yeah.
I think that's what I'm enjoying most is that this is kind of removed a little bit of that element of there being so many cookie cutter teams where it's added in something completely different that no one knows what's going to fucking work. I really enjoy that because I feel like Supercoach, not that it had gone stale, but there were just it was so easy to just put together a cookie cutter team just following information from all the podcasts or from Super Footy or from a bunch of Twitter accounts. And it was starting to become a bit, okay, like round one and my opponent and I only have 7 different players. This has added in a bit more excitement and something a bit new where people are like, I don't know what's going to work, so I'm going to get a bit weird with it.
Now we're going to have 8 different players.
Yeah, I think, like you said, like there's a bunch of people going around with Matty Flynn in there or Max Gawn. I'm seeing a lot of Max Gawn there. Just, if you just mix it up. Just change your team around, see how it looks, get the vibe from it.
I think we all know that no matter how much advice we give, good or bad, there's going to be some crazy person, round one, comes around and they've got like Kane Farrell in there and he scores 150.
Or Kieran Briggs.
I hate you, Chris. I hate you so much.
Listen to the Falcon Footy Podcast.
Wait. Damo, now that you have the soundboard, do you have like a sad sound you can play after what I say?
I might.
Okay. Or Dylan Shield. Hit it, Damo.
Come up to meet you, tell you I'm sorry. Copyright.
Cover it. You don't want to anger Coldplay.
I don't think they've got copyright on piano music. Actually, they might.
They might.
Yeah.
Chris Martin, famously litigious.
Yeah. Damo, have we got some questions this week?
We do have some questions. This first one comes from Corey. If Marshall isn't right for round one, which doesn't look like he's going to be, could we have Harry Boyd in the flex and use Archer Reed as the loop at round 3 for captaincy? You probably could.
Yeah, that's perfectly cromulent.
I think the only issue with putting Harry Boyd on your field and chaining him at 99k to an on-field position is when Marshall does return, how much does that affect Harry Boyd's scoring? And then what do you do with Archer Reed? Because then you're using a trade on a non-playing player to put Boyd back onto your ruck bench, and Archer Reed might not have made any money by then, so it really is just a sideways trade to another rookie, which is probably going to be stuck in your flex position.
And Archer Reed sounds like a fake made-up name for a non-licensed Australian rules football game.
like a fantasy novel?
Yeah.
Like a knockoff, like Aragon. Aragon? That's the one with the dragon?
The one with the dragon.
Aragon. No one? No big readers here? Aragon.
Aragon.
At Aragon. I'm gonna get an angry message from Lek.
Yeah.
I'm moving on. The next question comes from Rupink. He says, Harry Boyd for flex, talk me out of it. I kind of just did just by saying just by saying 99k player, chain to your flex position. What happens when Marshall returns? How do you fix that? That's the only thing I would say.
Yeah.
So Matt is considering a mid-pricer or a cash cow for his flex position. I mean, with a mid-pricer,
the longer I think about it, the more risky both of those options seem.
I mean,
I think the mid-pricer seems more risky than the cash cow.
It depends on the mid-pricer, though. Like, people are picking James Peatling. He is technically a mid-pricer, but it looks like he's going to have the monopoly on that Crows midfield. So maybe a mid-pricer if you're talking about someone like James Peatling might be okay. But if you're picking someone like Archie Roberts, then maybe that's not gonna pan out well for you. But like, it depends. The player, the mid-pricer has to have the role. You can't just pick a random mid-pricer.
Yeah, like Harlequin Reid.
But that's the risk behind it, is how many traps have we seen with mid-pricers in every season that they look like they have the role and then they don't have the role.
Keeping in mind that most people have their forward line flooded with mid-prices at the moment as well. Like, we're already pretty thin ice we are pushing the footy gods a bit far.
If I was going to choose, I'd prefer a cash cow in that position, but I'd go for someone like a Jagger Smith or Sam Lawler, or someone who we know is probably going to play most games that they're available. Cool.
Next. You're welcome.
Ro has sent us a question. I'm very curious about this position. Is it like a bonus player? So do I go big with it, like an extra ruck that I know will get close to a ton each week? Or is it a spot for someone you're taking a punt on, like a rookie or a low mid-pricer, like another cash-generating position? Well, Ro, I'm glad you asked that question, and that's basically the contents of this entire podcast.
Did we ever explain what the flex position was?
It's a flexible position.
It.
Flex means flexible. Position equals position.
So yeah, there's 23 on-field players. You get the best 22 scores of that 23. So you probably could go for a punt on like a rookie or a low mid-pricer, but I think there's going to be tactical ways to use it as the season progresses, but no one's got the right answer at the moment because it's the first time it has happened with this amount of players you need to pick for your starting team. No, but just to be serious for a second. So it is a bonus player, but you might not get the score. So an extra ruck that you hope will get to close to a ton each week is a good tactic, but you could also go for a midfielder, another defender, another forward with that same sort of hope. But yeah, I think a mid-pricer is probably not the way to go for it. I think it's either a rookie that you know will play most weeks and generate cash, or a premium that could potentially score 100, 110 and add to your round score.
Yeah, I don't know if we think if this is good advice or not, but I think if you're not confident in how you play the economy game for the whole season, which I know isn't necessarily everybody's strong suit when it comes to Supercoach, and it is a part of the game, but some people are much better at crunching the numbers or being predictive in how it's going to trend. I would say going with a known quantity as if we'll call it a bonus player makes the most sense, because not in like a set and forget kind of way, but you kind of know that you have that safety in the extra big score.
Well said. Next question comes from Jeffrey Head. Should we use this position to literally show off our best player in it? But more seriously, what is the best position to buff with this slot? Is it ruck? Tell me it's ruck.
We've talked a lot about ruck as the position, and I think that's because we gravitate towards ruck as being a notoriously safe ton floor for anywhere between mid 500s to low 600s. You can get someone who's going to average at least 100-ish relatively easily. So I think that's why people tend to gravitate towards the ruck. But by the time it comes season start, we'll be relying on the visual data that we have to pick the best available player. And I can see some people sort of going, well, hang on, I've got an extra 150, 200 in the bank. Why don't I put myself another uber premium midfielder? Like if you've foregone like a Nick Dacos in your structure and you go, well, shit, why don't I just put an extra Nick Dacos in my team? And then, I drop out if Joe Barry's score or, someone like that later on down the line. So I can see a lot of that going on. Or if you're worried about your team's economy, you might switch the other way. So we're gravitating towards this as it makes the most sense in our heads from what we know in terms of Supercoach quantity. We go ruck, big, consistent, triple figure scores. Midfielders can be up and down unless you're willing to pay 700 for a Bond. So I don't know if you guys agree with that or if you have a different take.
Oh yeah, no, I fully agree. I think ruck, if you want to go safe, it's ruck. Like you said, like most ruckmen have their floor of about 100-ish because they're going to be around the ball so much. Plus, some of the bigger ones are sort of glass cannons, so they can score really highly, but they can get injured pretty easily. So just having that flexibility, that's what we call flex, to just swing them in, and then you can put whoever you need to there, or a rookie, mid-price, or whatever. I like that. I think in past years, I like to have a forward ruck swing. There aren't really many options this year, so putting a ruckman there would act as a swing to an extent.
I think ruck makes the most sense from the start, but ultimately I think that your kind of end game goal has to be to get it to an uber premium midfielder. Having an extra midfielder towards the end of the year, someone who you didn't necessarily have figured into your calculations earlier on, who's just gone absolute gangbusters, that has to be the end goal.
Yes, like mid-price Jacob Wiedering.
All right, Clarky, you can stop now.
No more. I like these ideas. I know the other question. Can I throw a question in?
You can, but at the end.
I will.
This next question comes from Joe. Thoughts on Ollie Hollins for flex? He could take Nick Newman's role as the distributor from halfback for Carlton.
It's the he could that worries me. That just there is so much risk behind it. It's exciting, but there's so much risk behind it that if you get that wrong, he is at a price where it's very hard to dig yourself out of that hole. You're essentially just downgrading him to a rookie, which at that point you should have most of the good starting rookies.
Yeah, 333k is a lot, and it's also weird.
And Carlton aren't short on options to have in that role. They could move Sam Doherty back there. They've got Adam Sard. Jagger Smith has been training there. Jack Silvani has been training down there. There's
Jackson Binns.
There is a ton of guys who could take that role. Ollie Hollins looks like he's going to go to another level, but I don't know if it's going to be in that position and to that level. So yeah, I don't love the Ollie Hollins in the flex, but I mean, if you're strong on Ollie Hollins, I would start him further up the ground in your midfield, and choose someone safer in your flex.
I think with a player at that price as well, you need to factor in what do you realistically think that he's going to average? Because if your expectation of him is to average maybe max 95, the price he's not going to actually increase a hell of a lot. He might go up roughly 100k.
Does Carlton play opening round?
No.
So you don't even get a free look at him.
It's an interesting one. I appreciate Joe thinking outside the box with that. It's good to put him on your watch list, I think, as someone you've identified for a potential role change, but there's just not enough data yet to support taking that jump for your season start team, but probably one to watch for you.
All right, Jesse, your question.
If just like who's your balls to the wall option? If you had the guts to do it, are there some players you wouldn't do it, but you just wished you were the type of man that could? Because I've got a few. Like I was looking through there today, and Thilthorpe, however you say it, from Adelaide, and Riley Sanders. I don't know. I think they're interesting choices. I would like to see them play first, but they're the type of players that could pull out a pretty decent score here and there. I don't know. I'm not winning Supercoach. Oh, look, I'll say it. I'm not winning the whole thing. So I want to have some fun with it this year. And I kind of hope that by the time the season starts, I'm just like, you know what? Let's get weird with it. And like you said, Clarky, there's going to be somebody some week who picks at Kane Farrell and he scores 150 points. Be that person. If you can't win it all, be that person.
This advice is not necessarily supported by the footy mailbag.
100% it is.
Do you want to know, actually, Jesse, who I've considered multiple times, but opening round kind of gets in the way? It's Jeremy Cameron. Geelong play Richmond twice this season. Jeremy Cameron could literally score 150 in both of those games, but he's not going to be a 150 scoring guy every single week. But he's the sort of player that you could have in your flex to take advantage of that kind of matchup. So Jeremy Cameron, Harry Mackay, Charlie Curnow, those sorts of guys. I mean, it's not what the flex. It's almost what the flex was built for, but it's not what people are using it for. But like, I have no qualms with going for a key position guy that can go off the chain.
I think for me, based on vibe, I'd love to pick Alex Neil-Bullen. I think he'll do well at Adelaide, and I think they'll need him to be a little bit more prominent than maybe he was at Melbourne, where he was kind of just like a guy who did a really good job at his role. So I think he'll do a lot of leading by doing over at the Crows. Or alternatively, Caleb Windsor, who I think is just an extremely talented footballer. And my bias is showing because I think that he has the ability to go a whole other level after having a really, really solid 2024.
I mean, staying with Melbourne though, like Damo, you mentioned JVR before, and he would be in that as well. I think he's such a good pick for draft, which Chris, Clark, and Damo don't just forget that I said that.
My kind of off the wall ones. So there was a player who was mentioned in one of the earlier questions by Damo, Adam Sard. I think that with Nick Newman not being there, he will be the person who is the main distributor out of that backline. They'll be trying to get the ball in his hands as much as possible. And I mean, he's got a good history. He's averaged really high in the past. The risk with him is that he also has a poor injury history as well. If I wanted to be like Frank Reynolds and get really freaky with it, there's a player who is currently in my team who I think is a decent shout for the flex. Ryan Marrick.
I actually don't mind that. He's been training as the third tall in defense for West Coast. He's playing that intercept like Jordan Ridley role.
Yeah, and apparently he's got very good foot skills, and that's the whole point of him going down back, is they want to get him to be the distributor out of the back line. So he's a player who, I mean, he's only 220k. Like, he's a player that you could take the risk on in the flex position. I currently have him sitting in my forward line.
There's actually some guys at West Coast that are flying under the radar that shouldn't be. I've got some mates who are massive West Coast fans that go to their training once a week, it feels like, and there are guys that people are not talking about. And like Ryan Marrick is one, Jack Hutchinson is another.
How much? So I had to look up Ryan Marrick because I thought he was fake. So I'm looking him up. How many points, like averaging? What sort of jump in quality do you see from him? Because he averaged 41.
Yeah, but he was playing as a key forward. He's now been moved to the back line. Yeah, he's ever played as a key forward. So he's been moved to the back line.
You could probably see his jump in the same way that Woolworth's inflation has jumped on the shelf.
He's going to score 300 points a week.
Yes.
Get on. Yeah.
That's it.
All right. That's it for this episode of the Footy Mailbag. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Where can people find you?
Chris, you can go first.
I mean, at Lowry_16. I barely use Twitter anymore, though. So, yeah. Apart from that, I'm not really on much other socials. But you can find me at the Falcon Footy Podcast.
Yeah, at Falcon Footy Pod on Twitter and Instagram and all that. I'm off Twitter as well, but I'm on Blue Sky. But how do you share a Blue Sky? How do you say it? Because it's like there's a dot there. Just, I don't know. Just find me if you want to. Jesse something? Dot Spanner? I don't know how it works at Blue Sky.
Jesse's around.
Yeah, I'm around.
I may start tweeting more once the footy season starts.
We'll see.
And Clarky, thank you again, mate.
Always a pleasure. You don't have to thank me. I'm a co-host. I live here. It's like thanking me for being in my own house.
You for being in your own
you can
house.
find me at Quantum JC. You can also find us at all of us at the Falcon Footy Pod on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram. That's where we're around.
Oh yeah, we're back next week.
Yeah, we're back next week.
Should have said that as well.
Yeah, so new episodes will be coming starting from Feb. So next week we'll be hopefully dropping our first league. And you can also, if you want more footy mailbag stuff, head to thefootymailbag.net for our merch, written content, links to all of our socials there, and go to the website. It's nice. There's also a form there if you don't have social media and you've gone off Twitter because the machine is yelling at you that the world is on fire. You can go there and ask us a question without going on social media.
I've been there. It's very nice.
Join our official footy mailbag lead. The code is 711704. That is the official open unlimited league, 711704. And this year there is also Supercoach tipping. So join our tipping league. The code for that is 601064. Code again is 601064. That is for Supercoach tipping. See if you can pick some winners against us.
Or don't. Fill out the league. Crank that down, baby. Don't go for...
Crank that down.
I'm very, very tired.
Oh.
If you haven't given us a rating on your listening platform of choice, please do so. It helps new listeners find us. Next week, our positional episodes continue when we take a look at defenders with Horse from Insight Fantasy Sports. Thanks for listening. We'll talk again soon.
Remember to crank it down, listeners.